Shiur is dedicated to Nishmas Racheleya Bas Rav Chaim Tzvi. We've been discussing the topic of basis in our travels through Hilchot Muktza. We'll spend about half of today's shiur, maybe the first third of this year, discussing a few remaining details of basis, and then Mirz Hashem will move on to a broad, very important area of heter when it comes to Hilchot Muktza, the topics of tiltul min hatzad and tiltul begufa. So again, just to quickly review, we've discussed the din of basis, that if you have a Muktza machmas gufa that is sitting on an object, and it's placed there b'meiniach, it's placed there on purpose to be there for at least the duration of all of ben hashmashos, and it's the only thing on the object, so then the underlying object, the base, becomes a basis davar asr, and adopts the muksa status of the muksa machmas gufo itself. The reason for this, we've explained, is because at that point in time you establish that you really have no interest in that underlying base object. After all, you put muksa on it, you're not allowed to move that muksa for any purpose whatsoever. There is no heter by muksa machmas gufo, tiltul begufo, tiltul min hatzad, and as a result, now you've been mekatze das from the underlying base. However, we saw a number of exceptions to that rule. Exception number one is a case where you didn't place it there to be there, rather it was a case of shachach. You left it there accidentally. There was no kavana for it to be there. In that case, the Baal, the owner, has not been mekatze das from the base, and therefore the din basis would not be generated. Similarly, if someone else, let's say the non-Baal, let's have a child who goes and places money in a cup, and does the cup become a basis davar? The answer is it does not, because I had no intention of making that basis. Everything is linked to the Baal, to the owner of the cup, and because my child did something, that would not be considered to be the hanacha, the meiniach of the owner of the Baal habasis. That would not generate a basis. Another exception we saw, in addition to the din of shachach, we saw the exception that if it's not there for all of ben hashmashos, it has to be there for the duration of ben hashmashos. This we saw as a machlokas Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says you have to intend for it to be there all Shabbos. If you don't intend for it to be there all Shabbos, then you're not mekatze das. If you intend to move it sometime during the day, or for it to be removed sometime during the day, then the underlying base would not be a basis. We don't pass like that, Rabbeinu Tam lechatchila. We pass like Rashi. Rashi says as long as it's there for ben hashmashos, that's sufficient. Migud iskatzoi ben hashmashos iskatzoi lekula yoma. So if it's there for all of ben hashmashos, it's definitely a basis. If it's not there for all of ben hashmashos, even a part of ben hashmashos, but not the entire ben hashmashos, then a basis will not be generated. Another kula when it comes to basis is the halacha that a basis has to be aser exclusively, but if it's a basil davar hamuter ule davar haaser, and the davar hamuter is of greater chashivus, is of greater importance than the davar haaser, so then again the underlying base will not become a basis. That's the heter that many invoke to put a diamond ring, an engagement ring, on the tray which holds the candlesticks, and thereby, since the tray is now a basis both to the candlesticks and the ring, so therefore the tray would not have a status of a basis davar aser. There are some poskim who say, since it's purely artificial, it's an artificial move, perhaps it would not be effective, but many do rely on this practice of putting something chashuv that counteracts and makes the base to be a base of davar hamuter ula davar aser, and that, generally speaking, will also be permissible. We left off discussing that another requirement of basis is that the muksa has to be placed al ikar makom habasis, has to be placed on the main part of the basis. And if you have muksa that's only placed on an ancillary part of the basis, not a significant part of the base, for example, as we mentioned, you have a table and you have on the bottom of the table you have some crossbars for you put your feet, a footrest or something like that, and that's where you have muksa sitting, so that's not going to cause the whole table to become a basis. That's not called ikar makom habasis. That's not the main use of the table itself, and therefore, just because I put muksa down there, once again, using our lumdus, our svara, does not mean I'm mekatze das from the basis itself, and therefore, that should not be a problem. The Mishnah Brura and the Ramah really first does have an interesting discussion in this regard, and this is what we left off with regarding pockets on Shabbos. When it comes to pockets, so the Ramah writes, this is found in Siman Shin Tes in Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah tells us that when it comes to pockets, so there's a difference between certain kinds of pockets. Ramah is talking about a kiss, and when it comes to these kinds of pockets, he says you have two different kinds of pockets. This is found, not in Siman Shin Tes, Siman Shin Yud Halacha Zayin. I'll read you the words of the Ramah. Says the Rama, V'yesh, kiss shel ma'os. You're not allowed to carry on Shabbos a kiss shel ma'os, a pocket full of money. And this is true even if, for example, let's say I have some kind of pocket, a wallet, and someone, a goy, removed the money on Shabbos itself. But since the money was placed there b'meniach, certainly the wallet, the kiss, would have a status of a basis, and that would be asir. V'chein noagin miu. Then says Rama, v'chein bekis hatofur babeg. If you have a pocket, a kiss, a satchel that is tied, that is sewn to the beged itself. So comes on the Rama and says, "Oh, v'ikra beged omid lilbo." Since the main part of the beged is really meant for levisha, is not meant at all for the sake of supporting and holding this kiss, this pocket. So if